Good afternoon and welcome to the September 2nd meeting of the Watershed Committee. We're back from our summer hiatus. First order of business is call the meeting to order. Second is approval of minutes, and we're going back a ways here. As we didn't have an April meeting, May we're typically off, and then June we did our annual watershed tour. That's where the committee goes out and actually visits sites, locations. So we did kind of in the Panorama Valley this year through that, and then we're off for the summer. So if anybody can remember all the way back to February, any comments, concerns?
I just read the minutes, and
on the minutes?
They look good,
Okay.
considering it was a few months ago.
Remember that far back, but
Yeah.
I didn't hear or see any other comments earlier, so if everybody's good with those, okay. We'll consider those completed. We have a few items of discussion here tonight. So the first, we did get a request in from Schuetz Apple Farm. So they had a request for maintenance of the east side of 1068 Plank Road. So this is the northern portion of the Schuetz Apple Farm, requesting us to look at the drainage on that side. So obviously, first and foremost, we'll have to go out and take a look at that, walk it. And then secondly, we'll have to look at if we need permits to get in and, clean that portion. So in speaking with our Director of Public Works, we've cleaned some downstream portions of that. We've cleaned some upstream portions, but I think that middle portion, hasn't been cleaned in a while. I know we'll have to kind of work around. There's some fencing in that area, so we'll have to work with Schuetz to see how do we best access that area. When and if we get a permit. So we'll have to get proper permits from DEC Army Corps, for that. But, they did have some concerns and sent a letter into the Watershed Committee to take a look at that and then consider that area for future maintenance. So I don't know if there's any thoughts by the committee. Obviously, it'd be us to get out there and take a look at it first and see what the condition is, and then.
That's the grandson that originally started Schuetz, isn't it?
We got the letter from Marty, so that's, I've known him as the father. Evan has been, who we've been working with, he's been running it, more recently. I think Marty still owns the property, or much of the property, but Evan's the son who's kind of been doing the current day-to-day operations now.
Okay.
So I don't know if there's any other discussion. I think it's
worth
something it's worth looking at. Okay. So I say we'll take a look at that, with DPW and walk it with Pat and the drainage crew, see what we're kind of up against, and then, we may have to reach out to our consultant to, either do a wetland delineation, or we'll have to go through the joint application process, which this group is familiar with and the public may not be. But typically that's a plan. You look at the wetlands in the area, look at, the conditions, and then apply to the DEC and Army Corps for a permit to get in to actually do the cleanings. Anytime we've got to do any sort of dredging, if it's a matter of removing vegetation, mowing, trimming, that's something we can do. If it's, something we actually need to get in and dredge, we'll have to do that application. And then lately it's been a typically year, 2-year process to get, those permits back to get in and do that piece. So we will get that process started. So second item goes into our stream cleaning updates. Bob, if you want to give us kind of a status of where we are with some of this year's projects.
We've got quite a few of them done. Commission Ditch is done. Pretty much everything to the south end is done. 4 Mile Creek to the north is done.
Now this is just for the mowing portion of maintenance?
Just for mowing, yeah. Just for the mowing and cleaning.
So it's removal of dead trees, so
right.
Just for the public, we've tried to keep up and maintain areas. Once we've got in and clean it, dredge it, we get the permit, long process, clear trees, get access. We've continued to try to get in and just to kind of brush hog it, once a year, keep the saplings down, and then that gives us the ability to get in, access it, remove a dead tree if it falls over, especially with the ash trees. You can get in, pluck it out, not have to, get permits to get back in and do all of that again.
Yep. So we got a bunch of that done, a few more to go on that, and then once our machine is back up and running and our operator's back, then we'll go back to the actual cleaning of the ones that we've got there on Marshner Road, finish that project up, and then what we got after that one?
Marshner, where it connects to Harris, we were going to finish that up. And then, yeah, we were going to go to the discretion of the permits.
Right. See which
Yeah,
one's
we've
next
got
is going to be
a
running
few others that I think are wrapping up this year, so we can get into those. I know we've got to get back, and I think we asked for renewal of the permit going through Dolomite's property, and I don't know if we've gotten that yet. So that one expired. We were in there, and then we had to get some certifications with Dolomite to go through their process. So that, permit had expired, so I know we asked to renew that permit. There's some siltation on the north side of Wayland, so I think we've got to get that piece back yet. But I think we've got, some riprap repair by Knightbridge Circle, that's over off of Plank between Shoecraft and 5 Mile. I think we've got a permit for that. I think we've got a few others, and then we got a few in request from last year. I don't think we've gotten any of those back yet this year, so we'll have to kind of review the status of where we're at with what's current and what's pending.
Right, I think we still got that one off of Sweets Corners, don't we?
We do. And I think we'll have to look at what the time frame is on that.
Right.
So once we get the machine back up and running, and then that'll lead into our next discussion, but we've got a couple of projects, could be some winter work for our DPW crew and drainage crew to get in and get at some of these projects in winter, which actually helps with leaves off and, some of the vegetation you can see a little bit better and get into some of these spots, and hopefully if the ground is frozen, make a little bit less of a, impact on the area around it. Anything else? Updates on stream cleaning. So it's been a little lighter summer for us in stream cleaning. Unfortunately, our major machine is in for maintenance, but also a lot of other projects going on in town, new DPW building and other stuff happening. Didn't get as many drainage projects, but hopefully we can kind of catch up a little bit towards the end of the year and going into winter with some of our plan.
We need to get the mowing done too. It's been couple years since we've been on them to
Yep, that's huge to get
keep
the
that down.
saplings and the suckers from coming up, and then, keeping those access lanes open and available to get into.
Yep.
Okay. So that leads into, Mike has already pulled up the map for this. So this is Pennicott Pond. So this is kind of behind the Bay Trail Middle School area, the Pennicott neighborhood, west side of 5 Mile. So this is a pond built for the neighborhood back in the probably
mid-60s.
Okay. So at that time was permitted to have a pond in the wetland buffer area. Fast forward 50, 60 years, now we are required as a town and being designated as an MS4 by the DEC. We have to maintain our ponds and infrastructure. So as we go in to maintain this pond, now we need to get permits to maintain the infrastructure that is part of it. So this has been a long process. We're, I think, going on year 3, and we've had to get a permit first off to get in to maintain the pond. Got that permit. Then we had to get a permit to kill off the Phragmites. So they're an invasive species. So if we get in to dredge the pond, so the amount of work we need to do just to get into the pond, said let's take the advanced step of dredging it. Well, if we dredge the Phragmites, we did this in another location. If once you take the Phragmites out, they're considered an invasive species. So even taking them to a landfill, you have to pay higher prices. You're paying almost a garbage tipping rate, not just a spoil materials cover. They've got to then bury the Phragmites, so an additional cost. So we had to get a second permit in order to spray the Phragmites. So we're using ATIP as our group that we do the other pond maintenance with. They got the permit to spray it. I believe the spraying may be complete at this point. I know they had to do 2 different treatments. Those should be done. And then I believe there's some testing once to verify the Phragmites are killed off. Once they're killed off, then I believe this is also a winter project. We'd look to get into this area, get in and dredge that out. There's some trees that have gotten overgrown. So then we had to get a permit for the 2 previous permits that we had. So if the public watching wonders why things take so long, we're doing things as we need to, but 3 years and many permits later, hopefully we're finally there. But this has kind of been a long coming project, but it'd be good to get in and get that cleaned up, and this is just kind of silted in over time. I know we're getting back into using the muck muck-away pucks. We haven't used those in a couple of years, and just recently bought some more, so we're looking to get those out on Glenbrook Pond. So those are non-toxic bacteria. Almost looks like a little hockey puck you can throw into the ponds, and that helps eat the organic material at the bottom. So anytime we have to dredge a pond is a major undertaking, obviously permitting, a lot of process to that, a lot of cost, equipment, labor to get into dredge a pond. So that's kind of our last ditch effort for any pond, is to get in to dredge it. If we can kind of keep them up and maintain with muck away and keep up with general maintenance and mowing and everything else and be a little more proactive, we won't get to this point. But this has been in for 50, 60 years, old pond, a lot of siltation, phragmites. It's going to take a little bit more effort to get this back up to proper working conditions. So hopefully that'll be a winter project for us and get back in there, and it'll be a major DPW effort to do that. So thanks in advance to them. But good to get this one hopefully finally done. Any questions on that one? Or
Have the neighbors experienced any flooding?
they've not, at least to my estimation to date. That I think has been fortunate. There is kind of quite a berm behind those homes, so the homes kind of sit up, it drops down the backyard, and then, but there are trees growing right at the end of the pipes that come into the pond from the east side. And then, there was, Mike's kind of highlighted where that is, right at the end, is where's the water flows in. There's like 3 big trees that are kind of right at the end, that end section, so I think we're kind of getting in danger that that's going to block that pipe. And then we'd already done some proactive work to clean the outfall structure that was starting to get overgrown, that actually the water wasn't coming out of the pond. So I think, we haven't had a situation to date that I'm aware of, but I think the time's now to get in to do that. The issue is, as Mike had the layers on earlier, we're in a wetland buffer. So probably in today's day and age, the pond may not be allowed to be installed where it is, but back then it was. So we've still got to maintain it, as Mike's pulling up on the mapping, showing that, purple informational area. So we had to get the wetland delineated where it was, and then obviously it shows that, the pond's kind of in that buffer adjacent to where the wetland is. So that just has added many years and cost a little complication to do that. But unfortunately, back to your question, I don't think we've had any flooding from it yet.
Okay, good.
Mark, with such a kind of a mucky pond like that that's been, it hasn't been attended to for years, has it been a problem with mosquitoes or other sort of waterborne sort of vermin in that area?
I have not heard from the neighbors. I mean, actually, we do mow around the top of it. So the upper part, I know the neighbors walk around that, and so they've accessed it. There was a couple of Christmas trees in the pond in the back, so, a little bit of education to, hopefully we clean it up, it'll stay that way. Again, have not gotten calls, I don't live right there, so I don't know specifically, but, we've seen some, whether they blew in there or whatever, but, it's always an education to the public not to dump your grass clippings or leaves or Christmas trees, in some of these areas that, are functioning for stormwater, can quickly, plug those up and create an issue. But, I've walked it around it a couple of times. I haven't experienced anything too bad, but it's definitely time to get it cleaned out.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions, comments on Pennicott? So our next one is an update on Willow Pond. So this is one we've talked about in the past. This is where we have the sulfur smells. So down on Willow Pond, there's a documented sulfur spring at the north end of the pond. We've met out there in the spring, and I think the last update I gave that we'd met with the DEC on site. We'd walked it. They basically said, you need to fill out the joint app, which I talked about earlier in the meeting, and what our intent is to clean it, maintain it. So as you can see, Willow Pond, up on the screen here, on that north end is Penfield property, and then that northeast corner is where that sulfur spring is. Mike's kind of zooming in on it now. That's what's bubbling up, and our thought is that it's bubbling up because on the south end, when it comes in from Perrington, there's not the flow. It's supposed to come in from the south and then go directly west and then back into the pond, and it doesn't seem to be doing that. It's getting held up and it's recharging the groundwater, which is not a bad thing, but it's bubbling up, through the soil, and then what's bringing the sulfur smells back to the surface. So we've looking at a joint project with the town of Perrington. They did have an established drainage pattern, so when that subdivision was put in, I believe that was in the 90s, 80s, 90s, there was a design plan for a pond, and Mike's kind of highlighting the route. There was a forebay, there was a drainage path. Obviously, fast forward how many years, trees have grown up, the drainage doesn't quite flow the same, the swales don't flow the same. It just seems to be sitting there, and then it was never a wetland back then. Didn't show as a wetland until the most recent DEC informational mapping that came out as January 1st. So prior to this, it was not wetland. It wasn't shown as wetland, either DEC or Army Corps, but it showed up on the most recent remapping or unmapping that DEC did as of January 1st. It showed up, and Mike's showing that now as an informational wetland. So that's what that pink-purple color is. They were saying it could be wetland. So we met with the DEC out on site in May, and then we submitted the joint application, and then just in August, they finally got out there, did the wetland delineation. Mid-August, we picked up that survey mapping of the wetland boundary, and now we're resubmitting back to them to get the permit to go in and basically reestablish a swale. So this one will be a small project. We're not looking to dredge the pond. We're not looking to, drain the whole area. We're just looking to reestablish, what the drainage area was for that. So again, the work would be taking place in Perrington, working jointly with the town of Perrington. So we've sent notices out to the neighbors. We've got a lot of calls. I'm sure the committee's heard. The town board has heard from neighbors with concerns about the sulfur smells. So we're trying to work jointly with both towns to, one, educate the people about what's going on, and two, work within the permit parameters of the DEC to.
Who physically owns the property?
The town of Perrington. So it's on town of Perrington land around the pond, so we don't need any other releases but from them. And then we own, you can kind of see the dividing line, we own the north half is Penfield. It seems easier to come in from the south end, so we're, again, working with Perrington to come in from Putting Green Lane is that piece you kind of see down on the lower end, get access in off of Putting Green Lane, come up around the south end of the pond, and then get access into, cut those swales in. So we've heard back from the Army Corps. The Army Corps said they are not, don't need to issue a permit, as long as we take the material into an upland area. So we've got to show them a map back that we're taking it out of a wetland area, or or trucking it off-site. So I think we'll show a map that we can fit it in upland areas. It's not in the wetland. It may be easier at that point just to truck it off, and I know Perrington said they could truck it off to the landfill. They'll take the woody material since they've got, direct access to the High Acres landfill. So that's kind of current status of where that is. We're still in process, still working through the joint application process. I think the dry summer, that kind of leads into our credence of draining this. We're reestablishing the drainage project will help. As I say, the drainage or the concerns of the smells have gone away over the summer, but I think as we start to get back into, fall rains and everything else, I'm guessing that the concern for the smells are going to come back as that groundwater is recharged, and that starts to bring the sulfur smell back up. Questions, comments?
No.
So next item, I'm inserting something into our discussion. Donna, you'd brought up with a question, we've got two proposed solar farms coming into Penfield. So one is out in East Penfield between Harris and Salt. The other is in, say, Western Penfield, but just west of 250 between Plank and Northrop Road. So these are two pending projects before the planning board right now. I know you had somebody had a concern about drainage off of Salt Road. As we look at them today and going off of what the DEC regulations are, we look at solar farms if the panel is not touching the ground. So if the panel is elevated, the DEC basically says the water can land on the panel, sheet flow off, land on the ground. It is not an impervious surface. So if it touches the ground, then they consider that, and you got to count for that as an impervious surface for the area. But if it's off the ground, basically it says you're not adding any permanent, impact to the ground that runs off the panel, lands on the ground, perks back in. The other part of it that would be an impervious surface that would add to runoff drainage is the access road in. So they are creating a stone road to get into the property, and access to get back to the panels constructed. Their plan, and something we're going to have to take letter of credit, is in the past DEC has determined a gravel drive to be an impervious surface. Even though it's gravel, it basically says by the time you've driven on it, you've compacted it, you've got dirt and fines in it, it becomes so bound up together that it acts same as pavement or anything else. So that was one of our comments on the review, and Mike's pulled up the plans here showing kind of that access. So Harris Road is on your left, showing that access strip in, and it would turn into the site. You have a little transformer spot and then a turnaround. The rest of the blue is the solar panels that sit above the ground. So any water that lands on the solar panels would run off, land on the ground, perk into the ground, similar to today. The area that we had been focused on is the access drive and those turnarounds. Their proposal is to create it back into a pervious surface. So that's going to necessitate a process. They basically need to get in, install the panels, build all the infrastructure, and then they need to basically remove the road, scarify the soil to bring it back to a pervious surface, and then bring in more of a washed gravel, not a crusher run, to put that back in as the road once it's done. So DEC has a detail for it. They have a process for it, and it's something we're going to need to take letter credit for, just to make sure it happens properly, because they're going to want to install the road, dust it over with a little bit of gravel on top and say, we're done and it's a pervious road, and that's not the process that DEC dictates, and we've tried to make that very clear to the developer that you're going to need to dig the road back out that you used to access it, have compacted the soil, have compacted the roadway, in order to truly make it a pervious surface and not have to put in a pond, not have to do other elements. You're going to have to dig the road back up and then go through this process of scarifying the soil in order to get the porosity back. So it's going to be a little bit more of a complicated process, but that's what they have thus far said they intend to do. Normally we'd just say you got to put in a pond or put in some biofilters or rain gardens or something linear along that access drive in order to handle the water, but that's their plan and their proposal before the planning board. So it's a little bit more of a challenging process. So I know I threw a lot of detail, but I know you've got a neighbor or somebody with concerns about runoff and increased, drainage from it. So if they do it as they show, and as we'll hold letter credit to make sure they do, it should be considered as pervious as the ground is today. So they shouldn't see more runoff, to any adjoining properties than what is current. So it'd be up to us to.
Someone just came up to me in a different meeting I was in, and I had mentioned that I was on this committee, and they said, well, here's a question for you. So I tossed it out to Mark, and that's why we have that answer
Very
today.
detailed answer, but that's
Right.
how we look at it, and then just, from our end is how we're approaching our review, and then how we'll obviously have to make sure if it does get approved by the planning board, we'll have to follow the process during construction to make sure that it doesn't create drainage issues for the neighbors.
Great, thanks, Mark.
Sure.
Mark, at the south end of just near the transformer station, that other hatch type, what is that type of road?
That was just labeled as their work zone area where they would lay down, equipment and.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a staging.
So they can construct it and then
Staging area for panels, and
it will turn to lawn eventually.
Okay.
so, but that's the drive in, and then, so the only thing truly impervious would be the concrete pads for the transformer and converting it.
Other than town solar panels, do we have any other solar in the town?
We do.
Any issues
So-
with them?
Not that I'm aware of. So we do have two sets. So we have, the county's installed them on the land of the former Gloria Drive landfill.
Oh, okay.
So they're not over the landfill, they're on the non-landfill side. So the county put those in probably 10 years ago. And I'm always off by 5, so maybe it's been 15. But they installed those. I've not heard a concern, from that. The other set, the Water Authority put theirs in maybe 5 years ago. That's off of Watson-Hulbert Road, so the far end, east end of town. The Water Authority puts them in on a piece of land that they own out there, and I've not heard drainage concerns, from anybody in the neighborhood.
And the
as
town
of yet.
hasn't had any with theirs.
We've not, no. So we've got ours, Bob's next door to our panel, so again, as long as the panels don't touch the ground, you're not creating a
Right.
solid surface on it. You leave it up and you leave it more of a grassland, and I don't know how often you guys mow it, but it's not a manicured
They-
lawn. You leave it more as a,
They mow
Fellow.
it, the contractor comes in, they mow it, I think, monthly. Even with that wet spring that we had really no issue of flooding, of anything down there, and even in that swell, it was soft, but we didn't have no flooding back there, so I don't see really the issue of the runoff on them at all.
Mark, just to kind of an aside while we're on this topic of solar panels, the new DPW facility, will that have solar panels?
it won't. We've got the panels on the ground, so
not
that was an
gonna-
added cost to
you're not
put them on
gonna add,
top and
okay.
change the structural
Yeah.
integrity of the roof. So
Yeah.
we're not adding additional, just since we already have them on site, so.
Okay, yeah, just wondering.
Yeah. Any other discussion on that? Okay. So just kind of running into our communications, next item. So I've shared with this group and, with the community, we continue to have updates from, one, the Monroe County Stormwater Coalition and the new DEC permit. So we're in the middle of year 2. So the new permit was issued. There's a 5-year cycle with the new permit, and then each year there's tasks as part of it. So we completed year 1 tasks. We're in the midst of year 2 tasks now. And then some of the bigger ones that are coming is the mapping of our systems. Those go into year 3, 4, and 5. The town board has allocated funds towards mapping of that. So we've got an engineering firm out now doing mapping of all of our storm. We're doing sanitary at the same time, but the permit requires survey grade mapping of all of our storm sewer systems. So we have a general map of where all the locations are, but we have, so if anybody's out, and mostly we're working in western Penfield right now, but mapping all rims, inverts, pipe sizes, materials for all of our storm infrastructure. So we should have an as-built of all of our infrastructure once this project is complete. We can then use that data to do different drainage analysis. If we do have a drainage problem, see if it's the infrastructure, if it's, a matter of getting there or not. That's also creating a database for the DPW, looking at condition of pipe and condition of catch basins. That's one of the other items in the 5 years. We've got to look at all of our catch basins within the 5-year period. I think we estimated we have 4,100 catch basins in town. So, the ones that have less than a foot of sump, you just have to basically have eyes on them. You don't have to technically clean them out. So most of ours are a 6-inch or a 12-inch sump. We don't have, a lot of the newer ones aren't a deeper sump. We've kind of gone back and forth. It used to be deeper sumps, then people got concerned about West Nile virus, so then got rid of sumps and catch basins because you didn't want the standing water. Now, people want the sumps back to collect, debris that comes off the road, the gutters, cigarette butts, whatever other stuff comes off and collected in it, and then obviously it all requires maintenance. So that's some of the other items we're working towards, in years 3, 4, and 5 as policies and practices for that. Maintaining our infrastructure, the mapping's a big one. Mike, what am I forgetting?
Do you, the mapping you get from engineers for new subdivision work, do you get them, are they able to drop right into your database?
Yep,
You
so
set
that's
a
one of
standard.
our requirements is to get that in AutoCAD now.
Okay.
So, yeah, any new stuff we require as-built, and then that adds right into our system.
You just drop it in?
Yep, we just drop it into what we've got already. So that's, the newer stuff is already in there. Some of the older neighborhoods, as you know, we've just got an as-built from a paper map and rubber sheeted in, and, we've kind of got a best case you know where it's
Yeah.
flowing and coming and going to. We had a handheld GPS unit back in the day, and we did some stuff with that. We've got a survey grade GPS now, so we can add in stuff as we find it, and as DPW is out and the sewer department's, helping to flush ahead of the mapping crew, you find stuff we don't quite know that we had or weren't sure which way it flowed, so, it's ever evolving. We're always adding new stuff to the mapping to get that in. But while we're out there, we're mapping our sanitary as well. So that also gives us, we can do hydraulic calculations on, do we still have sewer capacity and where do we have areas of restriction? Again, I think we talked about it at our last meeting. You had some questions about of East Penfield along 250, and we,
Yep.
hired out some sewer studies on that one because we didn't have the mapping, to do it. So as we look at a future expansion and how many sewer units are left, that's just valuable information to have. What else am I forgetting, Mike? Anything else in the 5-year that we need to
I think you covered most of it.
get? Okay. So I think I combined together kind of the Stormwater Coalition. We're working on updates to the Education Task Force, so some updates to the H2O Hero will be coming forth. So we're doing some different public education efforts. As we've said in the past, we've got comic books, we've got other things to educate school-age children. We've got a billboard at the Red Wings game to educate people about stormwater. You drive around your neighborhood, you may see the placards. We've had Scouts and Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts put the placards down saying drains to the creek. Again, all through education efforts to people understand that, the catch basin in their street doesn't get treated anywhere. It most likely goes down the end of their street and into the pond or in the creek that runs in their backyard. So that's kind of a constant education effort, as well as this committee here to educate the public about, where stormwater
Mark,
goes.
in terms of education, and I don't know that it's education that's necessary as much as sort of education/enforcement, I'm not so worried about my neighbors, putting something down there or leaving, occasionally people leave grass clippings out, but it's easy enough to talk to your neighbor about it. But we notice with the landscaping companies that come through, they blow the grass clippings out fine, but lots of times there's the pelletized fertilizer or pesticides and stuff like all over the place. Is there anything done to reach out to them to remind these companies, and of course we don't know every company that services Penfield, but a good handful we probably do, to reach out to them to say, remind your workers to just blow it back onto the lawns when they're done.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything we've done. I mean, they're required to. I mean, obviously, if it's changed. You can see people put the little yard
Yeah.
sign saying it's been fertilized recently.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're a certified company, they should understand and have training, to do that properly and
Well, that's
to
what I said,
put the
it's a
placards
sort
out
of
and everything
education,
else.
it's
So
sort of enforcement. I mean,
yeah,
is there anything?
That's always hard and difficult is, do we know all the companies that do it or, but that's something we can bring back to the education task force. Again, that runs across the whole county.
Yeah.
All the towns and counties, if they've done anything, or that's, some education efforts to reach out to, and I don't want to name any companies out to put them out there, but I'm sure everybody knows the
Yeah,
the
yeah, but
gen-
I don't
general
know,
stuff.
are all the workers equally trained? Is there pressure when there's been a lot of rain for a long time and there's a whole lot of lawns to cut or a whole lot of lawns to, fertilize or whatever, in a 2-week span? Is everybody being as careful as they should? Just something as a prompt to remind the individual workers at the company, hey, take that extra minute and a half
Yeah.
and just blow
Blow
this
it
stuff
in the
back in.
grass. Okay.
It's not just the stormwater, it's, kids and dogs picking it up on their feet and walking
Yeah,
it into
on
the
the
house.
sidewalks and-
It's kind of a bigger problem, especially in a neighborhood like mine where there's tons of little kids and tons of dogs and that sort of stuff.
Apparently lots of fertilizer. Okay. Before I guess we got 2 items of new business. So one, we've got Linda sent out our draft dates for leading into next year. I know we're kind of early in September, but fall comes up fast. Any Issues, concerns, I think the only shift we had, I think we're kind of keeping pretty much our same schedule. The only shift would be the election day. I think we would have fallen on Tuesday, November 3rd, which would be election day in 2026. And so we're proposing to move it to Monday, if that works for everybody in the group.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So we'll adopt those, and obviously if we need to change, we can through the year, but we'll adopt those as our
This is scheduled.
calendars for 2026. One more new business item, and just as an FYI, through the Transportation Committee, we're working on an active transportation plan. So this is something across the town, and if people haven't taken their survey, there's a survey out there where people are looking for sidewalk connections, biking connections, linkages between parks. So we're looking through each committee and board for a volunteer for that, and Ed Freeman volunteered to be our liaison to that group. So he'll, share, if there's any comments, concerns from the Watershed Committee. We've reached out to the Trails Committee, ECC, I think will be later this week, so to those committees to be part of the stakeholders. We're looking at scheduling some meetings with that group coming up this fall, so we're going to be reaching out to kind of the cross-section as we can. We've reached out to the school district, trying to get in touch with students for their input. We've reached out to the rec department so we can get on the DEER program, speak with our seniors, other outside agencies, and then obviously, advocacy groups. We've got Walk Bike Penfield, we've got GROC, we've got biking groups, we've got the Trails Committee, we've got, lots of other, groups that have great thoughts and ideas. So we're actively working with Collier's Engineering as our engineer for that. They're working on that plan, and then we'll be setting up through the fall, meeting with the different stakeholder groups and getting input from other outside groups. So if you're watching at home, get online. It should be right under the main page banner. Take your survey, provide your data and input. We will have other public input opportunities, but just one more opportunity to plug that plan that's coming ahead.
Mark, what is the deadline when is the survey going to close?
I believe September 19th
Okay.
is our deadline, if I'm correct on that. I think we've got our next transportation meeting on the 16th. So I think that was the last time we were going to plug it that week. So I think the 16th, we wanted to push that till after. Thank you, Mike, for pulling it up. So this is right on our homepage. So I think we've got our transportation committee on the 16th, and we'll do one more plug at that meeting and then keep it open until that Friday. So I think the 19th is the last day to get your comments in and take the survey. Anybody else have any new business items to share tonight? No? Okay. With that, our next meeting will be October 7th. And we will be adjourning this meeting at 4.
Nope.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to comment about the letter that we got about the Silverwood ponds.
Oh, yeah.
That was a very nice letter. And as she said, you get a lot of complaints, but very few compliments. So that was nice to see that the public does respect us.
I mean, we try. I mean, it's, we do get a lot of concerns about algae. We don't treat algae. It just happens, but we do a few ponds. If there is heavy vegetation that's going to block up the outfall structure, we do some minimal treatment on those. So, yes.
It was nice to get that letter.
We did get a letter from some of those neighbors saying thank you for what we've done to, to help with that, a little bit, and it is appreciated, and wanted to share back with this committee. So, yes, thank you for bringing that up.
I make a
else?
motion to adjourn.
Okay.
I second.
Okay. So we'll be adjourning this meeting at 4:40 p.m. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for watching.